We're joined by Barbara Stocking, who's Chief Executive of Oxfam, who was involved in overseeing parts of the report, and also Margaret Chan, who we've just heard from, Director General of the WHO. But let's first hear from Walter Fust, who is the Chief Executive and Director General of the Global Humanitarian Forum, and also you chaired the steering committee on this.
Thank you very much, Nick. Presidents, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We commissioned the Human Impact Report following our publication of the report on the Forum 208 in November last year. After calls came from partners that we need a reference document on this very subject. One did not exist until then. We commissioned Thalberg Development Advisors to complete the best available research, updated wherever possible, and estimations in order to give a clearer picture on the impact. Once published, we experienced some controversial commentary in some media criticizing the chosen methodology. We take as our basis the IPCC's conclusion on climate change and the increasing losses as figured in this chart over the last 30 years, where you can see an over 200% general increase in floods. That was the first picture. Sorry, I was quicker with my hand than with my mouse. But I meant to go quickly over because the first slide created that controversy, because some people thought that we would take as a reference basis the victims of earthquake. We know that earthquakes have no or nothing to do with climate change unless proven so. We found that over 300,000 people today are dying because of climate change each year. This is mainly because of health impacts such as the increased burden of malnutrition, diarrhea and malaria, all highly sensitive to climate shocks such as rising temperatures and water shortages. The report also takes into account a share of casualties from severe weather events such as storms and floods. We found that the number of affected and dead are rising by between 50 and 100% over the next 15 to 20 years. Economic losses are also significant, and this slide gives an idea of the scale of the challenge compared to other indicators. Economic losses are estimated to be very similar in scale to overall worldwide official development assistance, as an example. The report has indicated that nobody is safe. Some 4 billion people live in zones vulnerable to climate change, adding people and persons on the move. Few can be safe from the dangers of climate change. Vulnerability has two main facets to it, environmental and socio-economic. These two types of risks intersect at their greatest for some 500 million people. These are the group of people whose lives are likely to be severely disrupted, either temporarily or permanently at any moment today because of climate change. This group of people are essentially the world's poorest. As we can see, the vast majority of impacts are being suffered in developing countries, including 98% of those affected and 99% of the deaths. While economic losses are greater in wealthy countries, all bar 1% of the economic losses in developing countries are totally uninsured, when considering that the 50 least developed countries account for less than 1% of global greenhouse pollution, the justice aspects of the climate crisis are made painstakingly clear. In conclusion, what this report tells us is that science was wrong to ignore this aspect of the problem so far. It is important to break the silence on this issue, despite the difficulties in having precisely accurate figures. We cannot wait for 20 years for an equivocal consensus on this issue. We can make good estimates today with adequate margins of errors towards down or towards up. These figures tell us that the human impact is truly huge and is happening now and not in 20 years. And we need to be aware of the scale, acceleration and distribution of the impacts geographically and by type in order to minimize them. Otherwise, we will be unprepared and risk to be fast overwhelmed, leading only to ever more problems. Thank you.
Let's take the bull by the horns if we can here, Walter Fust. When you look at some of the responses, okay, a minority, but it has smoked out a lot of interesting comment, particularly led by Roger Pilke at the University of Colorado. And there's been some extremely negative comment by a small number of people. But what I want to put to you is this. You say in the executive summary in the third paragraph that this report represents the most plausible narrative of the human impact. And you wrote a letter actually to the Wall Street Journal in which you said, we make no claim that the human impact report is the definitive scientific study on this topic. They didn't actually publish your letter. But the point I'm trying to get to here, along with Barbara, who was on the advisory panel, is has that in any way, do you believe, devalued the very fundamental message you believe is necessary to get over, even accepting that the data is incomplete and, as you say, it is only the most plausible narrative?
Thank you. No, not at all. In contrary, it has given more attention. And I got many replies from scientists from all over the world thanking us for coming forward to put it on so that they can come after and present their own analysis and do the research. That researcher, scientist you mentioned, he's a political scientist. He's not a climate scientist. And a British researcher from a top researcher on climate change told me, do not listen to the political scientists.
Do you feel that the debate out there, and I don't have to repeat some of the language that's been used here, many of you will be familiar with that, do you believe that it's been helpful to keeping it on the agenda, or has it, again, devalued in any way because of the ferocity with which those accusations have been made?
No, all in contrary again. And let's not forget, 95% of the comments were extremely positive. And again, even the members from the scientific community very much enhanced the report because we said we had to do it this way because there is no adequate data available, scientifically proven, like IPCC had done for climate change as such. But for the human impact, it was not done. The social dimension was completely lacking so far, and with this forthcoming approach, we are sure many new research endeavors will follow, and then we have reached our goal.
Barbara Stocking, your reflection, and let me just add again, paragraph 4 of the executive summary, a significant margin of error. The real numbers could be lower or higher.